before I start, I'd like to extend my thanks to the organizers, Dr. D. Uma Devi ma'am, my supervisor. You can say my guru also, my mentor, and also Manakini Journal for giving this wonderful platform. I would like to share my screen. Ma'am, let me know if the screen is visible.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It's visible.
Okay, so I think, is it visible? Can you all
Yes,
see?
ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay, so in the poster, actually, I have specially kind of prepared this presentation for this platform. Like other presenters, like they presented in previous sessions, it was part of their research work. But I can say that field research is very integral to my interest area as far as methodologies are concerned. And as discipline, I can say that I see myself as a someone who is interested in folklore studies. So I interchanged. I made some changes to the title rather than working on something which was you saw that the earlier title was women folklorist and the relevance of their folk life study. But as I've been reading a lot about ethnographies and different works, and if you are a folklorist who is engaged in the field, we all know across India there aren't enough books on methodology per se, on folk how to conduct field work. You have to kind of search through different works, ethnographic works, or across disciplines, whether it's anthropology, cultural anthropology, social anthropology, or sociology. You have to look at works to actually understand and apply it in your field work. So that's why I today I'll be looking at the some select works of some select field researchers. Um, and also very interesting is that they traversed kind of through their work over the period of time they entered the field in some cases as anthropologists, but then due to their commitment to the field and long years and decades of their work on the field, they developed as they have written paper on folklore also, whether it's Marjorie Shostak, American cultural anthropologist and folklore. And I think our Tamil audience is familiar with Brenda Beck. So she entered the field and studied about this oral epic from a very small village in Tamil Nadu. And then she is now a folklorist also. She's working in that area. So that's why this is the reason I changed the topic from women folklorists to women field researchers. So my main idea here is to counter that and understand what are the contributions of women who kind of used field research as a technique to study culture and interpret culture and other aspect of human society. So I will start with the research methodology. For this present paper, I will be discussing my some aspect of my own fieldwork in the end, about how I intervened and chanced upon seeing this women cultures and women in very inner corner, and it was a natural progression for me. And
Ruchi, sorry to interrupt. Please be louder.
okay, so yeah. So what I'm saying is my methodology for the present paper is, of course, fieldwork, because I talk about my own observations through of my fieldwork in Garhwal, and especially focusing on the women of Garhwal and the village I work for my MPhil. And my area is folklore studies. But field research as a method, we know that it cuts across disciplinary boundaries. So I'll be talking about field researchers, like women field researchers and the tradition. Yeah, so the special importance of the areas that I want to discuss while discussing them is about their access to the field and their relationship with the informants and how it developed so naturally, and how they understand and what are their methodologies. The present work has also referred to newspapers, reports, and personal interviews, because how else would you know about the person who's behind the book, the researcher, the field researcher? So I'll begin with talking about the objectives. I hope I'm audible now, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Total loudly. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
So the study attempts at exploring the ideas of sympathy, compassion, identity, and reflexivity in field-oriented research works across disciplines by discussing on select women researchers and my personal fieldwork account. It also attempts to critically reflect on the notions of access to the field and the dynamics that are involved in relationship between the researcher and the researched, especially from women's point of view. And here, through this particular presentation, I'd like to bring focus on women field research tradition and emphasize that they have offered valuable insights in the most humane way possible to know and understand complex matrices of human society and people who are part of it. So now I'll discuss about what do you mean by field and fieldwork and field researcher. Intensive fieldwork has been considered for so many decades to be the major, if not the distinctive method of social and cultural anthropology. And moreover, the discipline has been concerned with the study of small scale societies, primitive and peasant. Intensive fieldwork, however, has traveled far since Malinowski did his fieldwork in the Trobriand Islands, both with respect to methods and techniques used, and the kind of communities and problems studied. The paradigm of fieldwork as a concept was derived by Alfred Cord Hayden. His idea of fieldwork was for a sympathetic approach, and his idea was to coax out to approach the native by patient sympathy. Um, and Malinowski has been credited for placing fieldwork as a central element of ethnography as a new genre. The role of field researcher is, as we know, is very diverse and dynamic. When you enter the field, there is no, like the material and the aspect are so many that you cannot, you can just only immerse and try to understand things later on in your, when you go outside the field. So I mean, there are different definitions how different ethnographers and field researchers they have described this method. So I will not go deep into that because we don't have. I don't want to just. Yeah. So next is historically, you see anthropological studies have made extensive use of ethnography as research method. Furthermore, use of ethnographic material has been extended to a number of disciplines. As you can see, I've written women's studies, also psychology, and to an extent even to studies to study management, law, engineering, and give out productive results. And its usage across multiple fields of study has invariably enshrined a view that the empirical experience attained by an ethnographer's entry into a different cultural setting renders a better knowledge. So there are, of course, there is a difference between disciplines of folklore and anthropology as far as methodology is concerned. Like often I ask to the people who are anthropologists and then they travel and associate themselves as folklorists later on. So there is definitely, I can say, overlap in the techniques, and anthropologists and folklorists may easily study the same subjects in similar ways, but some patterns have been developed over the years, and similar overlapping I witnessed in the case of select women researchers that I have selected for this particular discussion today. Otherwise, there are so many. So, folklore has a greater emphasis on expressive forms and the common people who make and use them. As you can see, there is a lot of similarities which led me to discuss and focus on the identity of the field worker, which is common to all the undertaking empirical study of people and culture. Moreover, once considered to be hallmark of social and cultural anthropology, intensive fieldwork has gained widespread acceptance in social sciences, and the use of this method to study a wide array of problems from tribes to villages to hospitals to trade unions poses practical and methodological and moral problems scarcely anticipated when it was confined to the study of simple societies. So it's a common method in many disciplines now. These are some of the important points as far as field research method is concerned, like how social knowledge is very important part of field work used by scholars across disciplines. And you have anthropologist, American anthropologist Barbara Tedlock. She's also collaborator and wife of Dennis Tedlock, who is also an American anthropologist. And she, in her work, she cites Martin Hammersley and Paul Atkinson. Then that it has even been argued that because we cannot study the social world without being a part of it, all social research is a form of participant observation. And I remember yesterday I asked a question in the national webinar to Sudhakar Reddy sir, and he really very well elaborated on how this is also reversed. That's why my focus is field researcher. He said that with Chicago school, the definition of it really reversed and it became inside, like it became internal, the observation of participation itself. So you get textbooks on research methods and that interpret participation observation, which is a popular name for intensive fieldwork, to imply that field workers should deliberately participate in community activity in order to observe and understand the social reality around him. You see many ethnographic commentaries, so I have just mentioned how they differently define this experience as, the experience of a field researcher, someone who is marginal native, professional strangers, and so on and so forth. So, fieldwork, I would say that not only involves intellect but the entire psyche, the being and the body of the person that is consumed conducting fieldwork, and his or her data have no existence independent of him or her. It involves co-mapping of experience and mind, and a simultaneous mapping of mind on mind. So this I think is very important to understand. So it is a field research. This I think means it has the same meaning. Also, like I mentioned earlier, how we cannot, when we are entering a field, we cannot draw boundaries as such of one's field because most situations are very much diffused and intertwined, so it's very difficult for a field researcher to do that. So here is first example of the women researcher. These are book covers you can see of by Barbara Tedlock. In the middle you can see she's on a fieldwork with her husband also. And I think I really, what I noticed in her understanding was that she kind of rejected the existence of any boundary between field researcher and the people with whom they interacted. And she advocated for narrative ethnography as a methodological innovation that is very important to understand as far as study researcher and research is concerned. And she also notes in her essay on ethnography and ethnographic representations that field researcher traverses both territorial and semantic boundaries, fashioning cultures and cultural understanding through an intertwining voices. So there is this continuous recurrent reference to multiplicity of voices and how it is important to bring focus to the multiple voices. So I will move forward. I will talk about Barbara later on, along with one Indian sociologist and professor of environmental studies, Amita Bhavisar. She is a professor at Ashoka University. I really like her book, and her introduction was very. When I was before conducting my fieldwork, it was really profound to read her work and it gave me a deeper insight. You can see how she puts it very beautifully, the relationship and how you enter and what it means to be a field researcher. So she says that the reality includes the researcher. We are not outside the object of inquiry but are intrinsic to it. So her critical stance pertains to three related issues: the nature of reality that is being studied, the relationship between the reality and researcher, and the ideological stance of the researcher. So you see how I mentioned an objective, this reflexivity is so recurrent in these women field researchers, how they emphasize on bringing the voice, multiple voice, and the voice of other on an equal platform. So you will see collaboration. I have selected women researchers where they have kind of done path-breaking field work. Um, and it's reflected and interspersed in their writing, because you won't find us them writing about their methodology per se. You need to, like, I kind of encountered and chanced upon such excerpts while reading their ethnographical works. So there are many women scholars who, with their ethnographic work, made great contribution in different disciplines, be it Margaret Mead or her companion at Columbia, Ruth Benedict, when they were student of Franz Boas, and Zora Neale Hurston, the African American writer and also folklorist. So they were spurred by Franz Boas, and these women will really revolutionize the way we think about humanity. We see that women merge imperceptibly into place and people, with a caregiving, a sense, and sensitive touch in their approach that allows equal share of expression between the self and the other. It's vital to see through their works. We are able to recognize just how many ways there are to be human and how many multiple realities there are to discover and societal paradigms to explore through research, and their sense of awareness and being is more intense. They have a unique way to get under the skin of the people, especially women cultures, as I later on realized while doing my own field work, that it was so easy for me to get access to women's internal spaces. There I can really relate with their own field research and how, and also listening to their interviews, I got to know that most of the times their informant and close person who translated or through or they learned their language was a woman, from the local community. So the view of giving importance to multiple voices is focused in both Amita Bhavisar and Barbara Tedlock's work, even though both their works are based in different geography, people, and culture. So, for example, like I was saying about multiple voices and reality and the focus. So, you can see from her book, I got this quote. She's saying, I quote, "There are multiple realities constructed by people in different ontological positions. Inquiry into these multiple realities does not seek to discover a unified truth, but is aimed at enriching our understanding of divergent, socially situated truth." And similarly, Tedlock, much before her, emphasized that a researcher can allow both self and other to appear together within a single narrative that carries a multiplicity of voices. So, according to me, I also agree with them that a good research, field research, really brings out the plurality of voices, and just how the position of native is observed and conveyed throughout field research writing can incorporate a representation of field researchers' own location choices made and evolved identity. This procedure demands a critical self-awareness and continuous self-reflection, both when you're inside and outside, during the writing process also. Most importantly, empathy is a recurrent emotion expressed both in women field work, and subsequently we may come across such feeling in the literature of the same. Likewise, this human sentiment has been captured by Amita Bhavishar in her definition of what is participant observation. So, she says that the term participant observation serves as a shorthand for a continuous movement between inside and outside. On the other hand, grasping the sense of specific beliefs and practices empathetically. So, this empathy is very, very recurrent in their own understanding of themselves, considering themselves as part of their work. So I would say that it's not possible that a field worker can avoid intense involvement and produce reliable data. However, in past, this protracted fieldwork as a method has been criticized in social sciences at early juncture, and since it is physically and mentally demanding and morally challenging, that few seem to be willing to endure all the rough and tumble. There are other easier options too, but we're not talking about that. Fieldwork as a method is not meant for the light-hearted. It is a tough test of all human faculties, and it involves going out, interacting, facing, and overcoming one's own fears. Now we'll talk about Margaret Mead and some specific characteristics of her field research. So, yeah, Margaret Mead was an American cultural anthropologist who worked around South Pacific and Southeast Asian traditional cultures. And her famous work are like Coming of Age in Samoa, and then later on, Coming of Age in Samoa is a very brilliant work, an example of her reliance on observation rather than statistics for data. So her later book, Sex and Temperament in Three Primitive Societies, 1935, has been kind of considered to be a cornerstone in feminist movement, since it claimed how females in the tribe in Samoa were dominant than the women in the Western culture. And it kind of was very controversial also. Um, so you can see this visual. I would like you to just focus on this visual. And she is taking field notes, and you can see the native woman is hugging her. And she was alone on her ventures to the field. And it is very bizarre. The self and the other in this picture, through this picture, we can see so close. One can only imagine the bond she was able to develop over the immersion process with the local culture. Since she was alone, she was alone in the the ventures, and we can kind of, it appears that some villagers were part of her study, and they were not just mere topic of her study, but they were equal participants. They're clicking pictures of her. She's not just clicking their pictures or taking notes, but they are also kind of incorporating things into her world. Franz Boas taught his field methods course, ignoring discussions of scientific procedure but emphasizing the problems that needed to be studied and the manner in which material could be organized to support or refute a theoretical point. One of his most famous students is Margaret Mead. And later she commented on the methodology that there was no how in our education. What we learned was what to look for. So this expression suggests to me the unrestricted quest of exploring the subject in entirety, and also acknowledges the issue of endless unexpected possibilities one can come across on the field. Mead stated afterwards that the methods she used in Samoa were unconscious innovations. As researchers, we must know that it's not just the other who is studied in the field, but researcher is also observed and is very well the sight for the other. An attitude that recurrent in the works of women field researchers, be it Mead or other in the younger generation. With women field tradition, one can see this natural process of intimacy and bond and emotional acknowledgement of the other. Now we have, I'll discuss about Brenda Beck. Brenda Beck is a Canadian social anthropologist and folklorist. She's a seasoned scholar of South Asian folk studies who brought to the world great epic of two brothers called the Annamar Kadai from the Konganadu region. Dr. Beck has done extensive field work in Tamil Nadu. For her initial PhD work, she lived in Ollapayam near Kangayam. Please pardon me for my pronunciation. She did her fieldwork for 2 years in the Indian state of Tamil Nadu. And very interesting insight I got to know from one of her interview that her companion during long stay in the rural Tamil village was a Tamil woman, and who lived with her and gave a gateway to her introduction to the Tamil language and culture. And more importantly, introducing and assisting her to know in detail about the local storytelling tradition that became for 50 years, that became the focus of her entire academic, research area. So she has been instrumental in preserving and bringing awareness about Tamil culture and in Toronto, Canada, and across wherever Tamil diaspora migrant people are living. So Brenda Beck has invested, as I told you, more than 50 years, making the focus of much of her study a folk tale that happened upon, it was like an accident. So while doing the fieldwork in 1964 and 66, and her mission has been to capture this localized epic story known as Annamar Kadai, and bring it to the world with new insight, new life, and technology. Um, Actually, in the modernized written version, she renamed the folktale as The Legend of Ponnivala, the Book of Fate. During the recording of the story by the local singer, she had no idea that it will be so long. In all, it was like 44 hours of recording. But what is important here is that she deliberately chose a name that signified the region and not just focuses on male heroes. Punar and Shankar, the original name of the oral tradition form of the folk story, is Annamar Kadai. That means elder brothers, Punar and Shankar. But she, in the written form of the book, she kept the title "The Legend of Ponnivala" because she wanted to bring to the notice the contribution of courageous women voices, the female voices of the tale, and subsequently she decided to bring that overall balance of representation with her choice of title. She has published on matters related to different, like she has cuts across different modes, like whether it's graphic novels or audio series, artistic exhibition, even street dramas of this particular folk tale. But I will bring your notice to this, what she talks about her experience, field experience, which is my focus here. So she says that if I had not had the 2 years immersion in the structure, the social values, the rituals, and the daily activities, I would not nearly have had the appreciation of the story. So, do we understand from here and her statement from a women field researchers what she's emphasizing upon the total submission, or kind of the immersion into other cultural and social aspect to understand this particular folk epic of the people. And she's so much immersed. She is well known in across Tamil diaspora, and people know her about her work. And she is now also known as Brinda. So it's her Indianized name now. And we'll move forward to talk about Marjorie Shostak. She is a very I really like her this work, and these are the book covers you can see. And this one is this one I found somewhere. She was an anthropologist, but here you see she did her fieldwork at the border of Botswana and Kalahari Desert, in the Kalahari Desert, and border of Botswana and South Africa. So she also later published work about the Kang community's folk music. And although she entered as an anthropologist, but she literally kind of crossed disciplinary boundaries in many sense. Her work is very interesting. Basically, she is widely recognized for her ingenious field work to study the lives of Kang women in their hunter-gatherer society. It is most often referred to as unconventional work when measured from the ambit of anthropological model methods, now considered a work that rose an early wave of women's studies. But now it has found a special place in the realm of field research literature as a standard text. The value of Shostak's work can be gauged from her commitment to the methodology and by the simple fact that she considered learning their very difficult clicking language, and through this getting more closer to the Kang culture and traditions as it is. And similar to Brenda Beck, it was through the living with the women of the community that she was able to learn this very difficult language. So she relayed her vivid findings in this book called Nisa, The Life and Works of the Kung Woman. It's basically Nisa is a pseudonym for the woman. You can see Marjorie and Nisa together in this photo. So it's a key thing to note here that Marjorie has had many informants, but none of them were as bold and has they had a none of them had a very captivating or feisty personality as Nisa. So it was in the most unexpected, flamboyant way that Nisa used to convey these traditional stories that Marjorie fell in love with her, and she incorporated. But apart from Nisa, in the work Nisa, she incorporated multiple other voices of Kung women, but the focus remained Nisa only. Marjorie formatted, and what is beautiful that I said that how these methodological patterns are seen from from their very work. So Marjorie formatted the telling of the work interspersed with the direct voice of Nisa. She wanted to connect with her informant and create some special bond, and they did have a bond. Despite the contrast between their social backgrounds, and were able to bridge the gulf of geography and their social backgrounds that Marjorie carried to the field. Their bond is reflected not just in the narratives explained in the book, but from choice of imagining Nisa not as any other character, but a voice of her own in the text. In the book, there is an alternating pattern of different voices of Shostak and Nisa, a kind of extraordinary synchronized overlapping of field research participant observation and life experience of a tribal woman, told in her own manner and in her own words. We can say Shostak replicated the sharing and collaborative method of her field research also in the creative medium of writing about the fieldwork. This, I think, is very important that I wanted to highlight. Apart from that, she also returned after this one. There was a second book that posthumously it was published because Marjorie was diagnosed with breast cancer, and the bonding between the two can be seen from Nisa's offering of love and respect. She gave Marjorie a bracelet, saying her that please give it to your transfer this to your daughter and bring her to the field. Some after you return, you have to return back, and I love her. So this material offering has a symbolic significance that signals how close researcher and researched can get, and the power relation between them become less complex or more balanced. Marjorie's position, it suggests how conveniently she, being a woman researcher, was able to get smooth entry into the lives of Kung women, a close-knit circle, and thereafter succeed in blossoming a lifelong companionship with Nisa. And it's noteworthy example of how strong connections can develop between informant and researcher. Later on in 1989, Shostak, following her treatment of breast cancer, returned to Kalahari to interview Nisa again for the next project, which was supposed to culminate into a book, Return to Nisa. Um, and it was published in 2000 after her demise. And in it, Shostak describes a traditional ceremony in Botswana in which Nisa attempted to heal Shostak's cancer. And she was what is really beautiful here is to see that the exchange of emotion and care between them is seen through the re-entry of Marjorie in the life of Nisa and her involvement with the local ritual. I forgot to mention that Barbara Tedlock also, through her field work, she was initiated. She was studying shamanism and she was initiated into becoming a shaman while she was studying the tribe in Guatemala. Um, this hints towards a personal transformation for the researcher, a major personal transition that has direct influence on the nature of data collection as well as impact that work itself creates. Therefore, it can be rightly pointed out that in the select women field researchers approach, one encounters tone of humility, respect, and care. Often, their way of study indicates intense involvement of the personal even after their return from the field. So we have, ma'am, how much time do I have? Okay. There are literature on field experience. I will just
Another 15 minutes you can take.
so there are literature on the field experience that we can like if there are people who are interested in field research, and I'm currently reading this book by the second volume edited by M. N. Srinivas, the field worker and the field. So it has lovely, like it has from the Indian perspective, of course, and also this book through the female eye, accounts of women field workers studying their own communities. In this book by edited by M. N. Srinivas, there are total 18 essays, and also studying both equally divided, studying rural and urban India field experiences. Also, three I think three essays are Indian studying outside, like outside India. So, and even one of them is of women. Yeah. So, as I said, I think I've repeated this. It is written here that field work involves more than just mind, of course, and I would say that there are really no standard guidelines to help a student to achieve this goal. One has usually to fall back upon one's mental and emotional resources. And we can definitely benefit from our knowing these experiences of other field workers through these writings. So that was my point of putting it here, that there are books to rely on before entering the field. So now I will talk about my some reflections on my own field work. So my field work for my MPhil, yeah, I'll be talking about that. I conducted. I still keep going there, but the account that I'm discussing here right now, it's related to the 3 month long field study that I did of Jagar in this small village near Srinagar, in the Garhwal division of Uttarakhand, and it's a small close knit mountain village. And what I want to talk about here is um, the aftermath of the ritual ceremony. And in the aftermath, because I was living with the women, you can see this was the house we were living in. Um, rural Garhwali community gave an uncurbed social life encounter and a visual entry to study cultural text of not just the ritual performance as such, but to experience and explore inner corners of local women response to ritual, and to further analyze relevance of their interpersonal exchange in the aftermath of the ceremony, because it's very similar to other field researchers' work. So how they kind of naturally, because Shostak also entered the field, wanted to study Kang culture, but she chanced upon this amazing woman who was amazing tribal woman, and she focused her work because her entry was very smooth. Being a woman, we can understand this, but I am not advocating essentialism. I'm not saying male field researchers are but yeah, experience is definitely there. There is some difference which I want to highlight. That's my main aim. So you can see pictures of the aftermath of ceremony, and I think the first one is not clicked by me. It's clicked by the little boy of Babita. You can see the left side, it's Shashi Devi. She was the host. She was my host, and she is serving tea, and in the next photo it's Babita. So her son clicked this picture. So it was only after coming back from the field that I realized the relevance of these spaces, that I was able to understand what they means, what their particular experiences outside this ritual has a relevance to ritual itself, because women in Pahad, in mountain areas, are considered to be tradition bearer, you can say progenitor of tradition, because it is through them we used to sit in the kitchen or outside, and they are basically the one who transmit this knowledge to the younger generation, because most of the times we see there is a lot of issue in mountain, because it's a very difficult terrain, mountain area, and there are no very lot of opportunities. So men do work outside. So women are the caretakers of both outside and inside world. They take care of the food. They work in the field. So here I'll talk about the aftermath of the ceremony, and I've taken a kind of hint from Richard Schechner, the performance theorist, and he explained the aftermath of a ritual ceremony as something which is cooling off or getting performers and spectators out of or down from the performance. The aftermath includes spreading the news about performances, evaluating them, and in many ways determining how specific performances feed onto going systems of social and aesthetic life. His innovative approach gives importance to varied aspects: moving in, going out, interval, pause, and even audience evaluation of the performance. So, in the aftermath of the ritual Jagar, devotees slowly moved back to their daily work. Every day after completion of the ritual, devotees used to walk back home in groups, in tolis. And while in the context of extended aftermath, here the focus has been given to women verbal interactions. Outdoor Jagar performances attract a large number of devotees because the appearance of benevolent deity is considered very auspicious. So the ceremony is basically invocation of the god and their spirits in the body of the medium. Sorry. Yeah, so these domestic and outdoor spaces are bases of socialization from where they build connections and socio-cultural understanding through conversation, sorry, not convention. Yeah, so this these two photos you can see, this is one the neighbor of my host. She was working in the field, so I used to just, not like mentally like I'm doing field work or taking notebook with me, diary with me. So I was just immersing myself and getting used to their lifestyle. There was no tap, no washroom, so we used to collect water from this water tap. And every day after coming back, the women used to get busy in their daily works. So these conversations, so they used to have chit chats wherever, in the fields, if women collect after, because everybody used to go to the ritual and then come back and do their work. So these conversations that they had in their meetings, the practice of telling private narratives and stories about ritual were either in the form of kitchen talks or took place in outdoor settings like courtyard, guthera, field, means pungada in the local language. You can see in the first picture, she was working in the field, and or near the common tap in the village, where women collected water and washed their clothes. In the local vernacular, to communicate or talk is said chui lagana. It is connected to women groups only, and it denotes gossip. These informal dialogues, these are other pictures. So this is basically one of the shaman. You can see the woman in the right picture in a temple. She's sitting close to the temple. So she incarnate the local devi in her body during these rituals, and it was one of the interaction after the ceremony, just like normal interaction with her. So these informal dialogues between village women serve as a crucial point in their social relationships. In their discussion, they made comments on different aspects of the ritual, especially talked about the dance, the Jagar dance, the deity folklore, myths and beliefs. Such spaces of interactions, to me, are learning contexts where women do casual talks as well as perform the knowledge exchange. So it's the space that is relevant to how we acquire our culture. Um, it is in these milieus where belief, narratives, and cultural knowledge are discussed, repeated, and where experiences and facts are validated, shared, viewed, contested, and even verified. In fact, through the method of retelling, the narratives survive for a longer time. So these women have to play a very huge role in kind of keeping intact the oral tradition and the culture. And now we can understand the relevance of these spaces and their meetings, because mountain terrains are very difficult. Like a normal city people, it will be very hard for him. Like I really had to work on my own body to get used to, that mountain terrain and long walks and climbing. So, as apart from this, Gadwali women in their village and family are seen as carriers of tradition, and they play an important role in the transmission of knowledge, beliefs, and practices to the younger generation. I would like to conclude now. So, these points are very important. First is that, as far as field methodology is concerned, I'll say that, or field research is concerned, that non-participant observation borders on the impossible for anyone who plans to spend fairly long periods in the field. In this situation, the informants expect the field worker to be involved in their affairs and therefore draw in both the exclusive and the mundane. Uh, and also, I would like to conclude saying that through women field research, literature, and methodological tradition that they pursued, there's a lot to learn about qualities of equal exchange, mutuality, and interdependency. Such techniques are nurtured and developed over the course of dedicating oneself seriously with the people and place. Um, of course, you see the empathetic sentiments often reappear in their work and choices made as far as methods are concerned. More significantly, they tend to choose understanding over judgment. And that's what is central and foremost for a good field oriented work across disciplines. The very significance of women field researchers has been that they not just cross disciplinary boundaries and draw ideas of natural processes of communities that they are working on, but surely uncover deeper layers of meaning otherwise hidden to the outside world. And as noted in the works of women researchers mentioned in this work, they have played an important part in giving voice to the downtrodden and those undermined by oppressive social structures. I can say that women field researchers' contributions are immense to the mainstream discourse, different alternative worldviews with local women cultures and traditions, associated with local women cultures and traditions, and similar experiences, stories, life narratives that stand far away and often in opposition to the standards set by the fast pacing globalized world that we largely inhabit. The insights of shared womanhood and human condition often appears vividly through their works, such that their works have become an effective vehicle for conveying the life experiences and histories of members of another culture in the subject's own idiom, like we see in Marjorie's and Nisa's case. She gave Nisa an equal, voice and agency. Their works and methods have been far ahead of their times, whether it's Mead or it's Brenda Beck, I'd say, in terms of being innately reflexive and had given agency and voice to the disempowered on many planes. To put it in Mead's words, like if you remember, I talked about. So, what I really find that connects these different works of female field researcher is that when Margaret Mead talked about in her interview unconscious innovation that she focused on, and Brenda Beck's idea of deep immersion, without which she wouldn't have able to get connected with the Tamil folk tale of Annamar Kadai, and Amita Bhavisar in her study of tribals of the Narmada Valley. And yeah, so Amita Bhavisar focuses on the empathetic coexistence. So that I find significant in the works of women field researchers, and subsequently it's reflected through their skills of writing the narratives. Um, Thank you very much. I'll end here. Thanks a lot for being so patient and for so long. Like it's been, I think, more than 1 hour. Okay.